the meeting to order. Don, would you please do a roll call of the members?
Absolutely. Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Dr. Mahoney. Mr. Peterson.
I missed my mute button. I'm here.
Mr. Peterson. Mr. Hendrickson. Mr. Jacobson. Mr. Costin. Are you guys hearing me okay?
I can hear you fine, Don.
Ms. Johnson.
I'm here.
Mr. Montplaisir. Mr. Redlinger.
I'm here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Gehrig. Ms. McCall.
Here.
We are short one member.
Dawn, it looks like Mr. Peterson just joined.
Mr. Peterson?
Also, I see Mr. Montplaisir just
Mr.
joined.
Mr. Montplaisir?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Chad, I can hear you, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Montplaisir? The quorum is present now.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business is to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. They have been distributed. Are there any additions, questions, concerns?
Peterson, motion to approve.
Steen, second.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson moved. Commissioner Steen seconded to approve the minutes as distributed. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Mike Montplaisir is on now, it looks like.
I am here and yes.
Thank you, Mike. Next order of business is item number 3 is the approval of the bills. Mr. Costin?
I do not see him on the meeting, Mayor Dardis.
Thank you, Paul. As you can see on the screen, the Cass County Joint Water Resource District is for $2,593,906. The City of Fargo for $4,997,588. Dorsey and Whitney for legal services of $281,394. Onstead Twitchell for legal services to the tune of $121,007. Clay County diversion bills. Moorhead Clay County Joint Powers Authority at $95,809. Cass County reimburse miscellaneous expenses for the executive director and staff of $2,322. Marsh and McLennan Agency, a Diversion Authority general liability insurance premium of $9,928 for a total of $8,101,957. Bills received through October 14th. I may have to divert to Mr. Paulson if there's any questions. Are there any questions or concerns on the bills for October 2020? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Steen, move to approve.
Redlinger, second.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Thank you, Mr. Redinger. It's been moved and seconded to approve the October 2020 bills as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, Don, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. The next order of business is item number 4 is the financial report. Again, there is an attachment, has been distributed. And normally we call on Mr. Costin again to help us with this report. Is he on at this time?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If,
Who's speaking?
This is Rick. Oh,
Yes,
yeah. He's
Steve.
not on. Mike, would you be prepared to cover this?
Sure, I can cover it.
If that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Redlinger. Go ahead and proceed.
Montplaisir, actually.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Montplaisir. Excuse me, different mic.
Our expenses to date, you can see, have been a little over $583 million. It's hard to talk in millions of dollars like that. Our revenue has been $668 million. For this year, our expenses have been just about $49 million, and our revenues have been just about $36 million. If we go on to the next page, we have about $85 million in assets right now, most of that being in cash. Part of that cash is money that we've borrowed, so we do owe some money also.
Anything additional, Mr. Montplaisir?
If we want to go to the next page, that's our budget to date. We have an expenditure budget of $138,559,000, and fiscal year to date we have spent $57,674,000. Current month was $9,443,000. We have a lot of outstanding encumbrances, which leaves a negative fund balance, or a negative budget balance. However, most of those dollars won't be spent this year. And of course, as you can see, a lot of the spend this year, the $57 million, has been on land.
Mr. Montplaisir.
Yes.
This is Rick, Mr. Chair, as well. Just a note, we did note earlier in the day that there's probably an error there, small error, but under diversion channel and association infrastructure. Fiscal year to date is $5,685,000, and the percent expended is 0. So I think it's just a formula error there is all.
Formula error, yeah.
Okay, so we can get that corrected going forward. That'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Anything else for us, Mr. Montplaisir?
That's it.
All right, that concludes the financial report. Is there any further discussion? Questions? Chair would entertain a motion, please.
Steen to move to receive and accept the financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Is there a second, please?
Montplaisir,
Peterson, second.
second.
Thank you, Mr. Montplaisir. Has a second. Been moved and seconded to approve the financial report as presented by Mr. Montplaisir and distributed. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business is item number 5 is the Executive Director Financial Report. Mr. Paulson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Finance Committee. I'll try not to belabor too much here since Mr. Montplaisir just went through his financial report. I just have additional information included in your packet here for review at a subtask level of the different budgets that we have. As Mr. Montplaisir had mentioned before, we have total expenditures on the program to date at $583 million. Just like last month, you can see we're running significantly under budget this year. A lot of that is related to Fargo in-town projects, as well as land acquisition that will be forthcoming over the course of the next 3 to 4 months. Peggy, if you could move to the next slide.
Mr. Paulson, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Back on the level 1, just a question on this. We got the Fargo in-town projects. You mentioned, they were under budget, and there's 2 categories there. One's the regular Fargo in-town, and then we've got the Fargo River Stage 37-foot projects. And that's when I'm looking at the estimate for completion, the Fargo in-town projects appear to be pretty much totally spent. And then we got Stage 37 projects that we're just starting to expend at this point. A question that comes up, and I've raised this in the past, when we've got Fargo in-town projects, I think we just approved like $5 million or something thereabouts for Fargo in-town projects. Do we actually have a budget that we tie these expenditures to, or is all the $5 million related to the Stage 37? And then the other question I've raised in the past as well is, do we actually budget those projects up front at the beginning of the year? How are they monitored? So we know we're basically on target with those, because I know it's a moving target. And for example, we just picked up that Oak Grove change this last year, I think, for an additional $6 or $7 million for that project as well. So just curious how that's being handled.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Steen. That's a great question. So the standard protocol right now is that the City of Fargo Engineering Department compiles a budget for the River Stage 37 projects. That budget is delivered to the Diversion Authority for review and acceptance. So we are working under a current budget for that River Stage 37 that's been incorporated into the program. On an annualized basis, the City of Fargo determines the amount of projects that they can feasibly accomplish in any given year. So in 2020, that was determined to be the $24 million you see under the Fargo River Stage 37 project. Part of the difficulty of when that actually gets expended, however, is related to the acquisition of the underlying property for those projects. And so up until this point, it's been the City of Fargo and the Diversion Authority's perspective that we do not use eminent domain and that it's a voluntary buyout. And so there's some level of anticipation that the land deals will move forward in any given year. And that is directly related to whether the project is implemented or not. And so we do anticipate to run under this year, as there's been a few projects that the City of Fargo has not been able to initiate. You are correct that the bills that were just approved for the about $6 million were related to the River Stage 37 project. So that will bring us up to about $8 million out of the 24 that we had anticipated to expend. I would anticipate some additional bills coming from the City of Fargo towards the end of the year related to the projects that they did undertake this year, but we will not be reaching our budgeted amount for in-town projects. So that's in general, that's the process that we take. We do right now review the bids that come in for the City of Fargo projects. The City Engineering Department makes us aware of those. However, we do defer quite a bit of leeway to the city engineering department to be able to incorporate those projects through their standard engineering practices that they have. But we do ask that they notify us if there's any amendments that need to be considered, and we do bring those to finance and the board, such as the Oak Grove project, if you can recall. Those did go through finance and ultimately to the board for a budget amendment approval.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Steen. I have one additional comment that I'd like to make is, this is a discussion that I've been engaged in with Mr. Steen and Mr. Paulson. And my thought is that with regard to the 37-foot projects with the city of Fargo, that at some point in time, shortly after the first of the year, I would highly recommend that we have a update, if you will, from Fargo Engineering as to what the prospects are for the projects that they can manage and for 2021. There's a lot of money that's been designated, $99 million for the 37-foot projects, and we've spent 14.5 million. And I think that that's important, that if we've got dollars that are earmarked for those types of construction projects, that the Diversion Authority ought to have some working knowledge as to what's going to transpire. I realize that some of this is negotiations with some of the homeowners that have not agreed to be bought out, but I think that that would be appropriate in the near future, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we will make sure and engage the City of Fargo Engineering Department in that discussion. Consequently, I am working with the City of Fargo right now on a resolution that should take care of some of the procedural items that we've discussed here, such as timing and administration of the in-town project budgets. And the process for amendments and approvals. And we do hope to have that in front of Finance Committee and the board within the next few months.
Well, as we discussed this morning, the concern will be as we move closer to actually building the diversion channel and the like, there's going to be some similar contractors or same contractors that will be involved in the two projects. The two elements of our project. And my concern will be, their manpower and their ability to perform at a level of both of these types of projects that we've got. And continued delay, obviously, there's also an inflation factor. So that's why I would highly recommend that we ask for some a narrative as to how they're going to move forward. Thank you.
Excellent insight, Chairman Dardis. You're spot on, and I certainly, would agree with your comments, and certainly something that we will be looking at moving forward over the course of the next few months.
Joe Paulson, Mahoney here. I think Nathan is on, and we do have a 5-year budget that we have laid out there. And we have to remember there's some pumps in there as well that we're going to delay till towards the end of the project. So to Mayor Dardis's comment, yeah, you could spend some of the money up front, save some money. But I think in the financial plan that Joel has, we do have the money allocated in a certain time frame to help. We got the P3 done and can do some of that stuff. On the housing, we used to have like 27 houses. We're down to 6 houses now that we have to deal with as far as our flood management. But Nathan, are you on? I think, could you just speak? We do have a budget, and it has been outlined, and it has to correlate with the overall DA financial plan, right?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I am on, and yeah, we definitely have a budget and the kind of schedule laid out here of what we hope to get accomplished here in the next few years. And I would say to Bernie that you're exactly right, that I share the same concerns of making sure that we're not overlapping a lot of the P3 work with the remaining in-town work. So next summer, we're planning to try to get a lot of this work completed that hopefully will free up some of our local contractors to be able to work on the P3 projects. So next summer looks like it's going to be a very busy one.
Thank you, Nathan. Please continue, Joel.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So again, just as last month, a majority of our cost this year to date has been in, a couple of different areas. One of those being the management, legal, financial, and procurement for the P3. You can see we're running on budget. We do intend to expend the full amount of that budget line item this year. Next slide, please. And then as well, you can see the in-town flood protection projects running under budget as explained. And then the other large component, as Mr. Montplaisir had mentioned, is the land acquisition and mitigation. And on this item, I'd like to bring up a topic for the committee to consider. I did prepare the cash budget and had that delivered to the Finance Committee last month for review and consideration. I would propose at this time, though, that we suspend that review until the end of the year and look to approve the cash budget in December. The reason being is that, as you can see, our lands program has about $50 million worth of appraisals outstanding at the moment. And depending on when those negotiations and final acquisition of the land occurs is really going to affect what our cash budget is going to look like for next year. And so I would request some variance with the Finance Committee to allow me to have a couple extra months here to see how many deals we can close and how much of that 50 million we can expend prior to the end of the year to give us better clarity in our budgeting for the 2021 process.
Would you like that as an actionable item, Mr. Paulson?
I would like a recommendation from the Finance Committee to the board on that item, and I'll bring it up at the board meeting tomorrow.
Mr. Chair. This is Rick. I'd like to move to authorize or recommend that the cash budget be prepared and presented to Finance Committee no later than December of 2020.
Mahoney, second.
We have a motion on the floor, moved and seconded to the cash budget be pushed back to the, shall we say December 31st, Rick?
That's fine.
Yeah, okay. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Mahoney has his hand up for a question. Mr. Mahoney.
Sorry, Bernie, that was the last thing. I'll take my hand down. That was a comment for Nathan.
All right, thank you. John, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is
Don,
everyone.
Don, I'm on here too. This is Chuck, and it's yes.
Oh, hi, Chuck. Thank you.
Mhm.
Please proceed, Mr. Paulson.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This last page just is for information. We are running on budget. We'll probably be a little bit under for P3 support services. But overall, in general, we're sitting at 48 million expended to date over a $138 million budget. And I'll stand for any additional questions that anyone may have.
Questions for Mr. Paulson? Hearing none, okay. Moving on then to contracting actions, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one contracting action for Finance Committee recommendation to the board today. It is Task Order 17, Amendment 10, contained within your packet. This is services during construction and on-call services for Work Package 42. And this is related to the 2nd Street pump station project that was implemented as an in-town City of Fargo project. The project is complete. However, there was work after construction to deal with some issues that arose on the project related to the pumps and some additional contractor litigation that we have ongoing. And so we did require additional support from HMG to support the case and deal with the issues to find resolution. And so that is what this task order amendment is for, and I'll take any questions if there are any. Otherwise, I'll recommend approval from the Finance Committee.
Mr. Paulson, so this is still an ongoing legal situation, so this is just a step in that process?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We do have continued ongoing litigation related to this project. I do not anticipate any significant additional engineering work that needs to be done. I think HMG has taken care of and satisfactorily found resolution to a number of the issues, but we do still have a claim from the contractor. So more than likely, we would anticipate some additional legal bills in the future for this project.
Additional questions for Mr. Paulson? This is an actionable item, so the chair would entertain a motion, please.
This is Rick Steen. Move to approve Task Order 17, Amendment 10.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Is there a second, please?
This is Chuck. I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Chuck. Been moved and seconded to approve the HMG Amendment 10 for services during construction and on-call services, contracting actions. Is there any further discussion? Don, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Please continue, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These items here are for your information. These were Executive Director approved contracting actions. The first one was for Braun Intertech for geotech services for some of our demolition projects. The second one was a cultural resource investigation that occurred on a number of our demolition projects. The third one was services during construction for Work Package 43. This is the Oxbow Hickson Baki levy. The fourth one was Task Order 26 for Work in Kind. This was for HMG for support of the Corps' design. And the last one was a Task Order 30 for property structure mitigation services from HMG for $15,000. And I'll take any questions if there are any.
Questions for Mr. Paulson? Hearing none, please move on.
All right, the next item, Mr. Chair, is also for your information. These were two contracting actions that were approved by the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. Both of them related to appraisal services. As you can see, and I'll take any questions if there are any.
Questions for Mr. Paulson? Thank you.
All right, and the next item is for your information as well. Task Order 2 Amendment 04 appraisal services for environmental monitoring easements for the MCC JPA. And that was approved by the MCC JPA last month. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Any questions on this one? Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Moving on to other business. Item number 7 is the Dakota Carrier Network. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I was on mute. Before the Finance Committee, you have the one of many incoming MOUs related to the P3 procurement. The process of the procurement requires us to go out and secure approvals for relocations of utilities that cross the channel and to coordinate those utility relocates into an MOU. And under the MOU, that coordination then occurs with the successful developer for the P3 agreement. There are going to be multiple MOUs that come across the Finance Committee's desk, so to speak, and then onto the Diversion Authority's desk for approval. These are each contract is going to have a slightly different approach to how we handle the different utility relocates. I can certainly answer any questions you have. There are also some technical issues that are attached to the documents. I believe that Martin's online if the board has any technical questions, but this is all part of the P3 procurement, and we envision that over the next month or two, you're going to see a lot of MOUs coming through.
Mr. Chairman, Chad Peterson here.
Mr. Peterson, question for Mr. Shockley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shockley, is this more of a housekeeping thing? How much, I'm just going to be blunt here, how much do we really as board members have to dig into this stuff? I mean, is it housekeeping, or should we be really kind of delving into each one of these contracts?
Well, what I would say is if you're interested in technical issues or legal issues related to utility relocates, Martin, I, or Chris can certainly answer your questions. As board members, you probably don't need to go into the minute details of each of these utility relocates. At the end of the day, it's the easiest way to think about it is we're required to relocate different cable carrier networks so that the channel can be constructed. And at the end of the day, that's how this works. There are very specific requirements about where the lines are located and how they're going to be reconstructed. And so what I would say is if board members have questions, we can handle those offline because they get into really technical details specific to each utility.
At what point in time will the financial element, the cost of this, enter into this, Mr. Shockley?
So I think, and Martin can jump in, but the costs of these types of relocates are included in the cost estimate. And because some of the work is being performed by the P3 developer, it will be included within the P3 bid. So it's easiest to think about it as this is setting the stage for the utility relocate because we need to have the agreements in place. And then the final pricing comes as part of the P3 bid.
So the purpose of these documents are for the P3 bidders so they understand the scope of everything that they're including.
Yeah, that's one part of it. The other part is we have to have authority to relocate these utilities because we don't own the easements, and this gives us the authority from the utility carrier to relocate their particular utility and make sure it conforms to the Army Corps of Engineers standards, make sure it conforms to FEMA standards, how lines are grouted, how they're placed underneath the channel. And it also gives the P3 contractor direction on how to conduct those utility relocates. So the P3 contractor will look at each of these agreements and it'll state how they're supposed to relocate the particular utility. And so it's an important function of setting the groundwork for the bidding and then ultimately for the construction of the utility relocate. In a typical design bid build search circumstance, you would have these would occur after the bid is let. And so oftentimes you'll get a bid from a contractor, but there'll be additional costs associated with utility relocations. In the P3 world, these agreements come ahead of the bid, but you get, as the owner, you know what the actual construction will cost, including utility relocates. So it's one of the advantages of the P3 bid process.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Mr. Nicholson has his hand up. Martin, please.
Yeah, and actually, John covered a couple of things there right at the end I was going to mention. In short, Commissioner Peterson, this is business as usual for the P3 side. It's very detailed work, but it's important work, as John just pointed out, to make sure you get those in the scope nailed down so that you get those in the project. There are, if my count is correct, going to be about 20 of these or so that you'll see coming across your desk. So as John pointed out, for those of you that want to dive deep, but I would consider this good work by John and the rest of the team to make sure that the details are hammered out before that pricing is done.
Thank you, Mr. Martinson. Additional questions from Mr. Shockley or Mr. Martinson? Hearing none, we'll move on. The Dakota Carrier Network Memorandum of Understanding is a actionable item. The chair would entertain a motion, please.
This is Rick Steen. Move
Mr.
to
Steen.
approve the MOU with Dakota Carrier Network.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second, please?
Second, Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney. Been moved and seconded to approve the Dakota Carrier Network Memorandum of Understanding. Is there any discussion? Any additional discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yep.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes, yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business is a WIFIA update. Mr. Shockley.
Not much of an update right now. We're waiting on the term sheet to be sent over from US EPA WIFIA to the Diversion Authority. Have not seen that yet. I was going to follow up with them today and just see where that term sheet was at, but today sort of got away from me. I will try to follow up with them tomorrow before the board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Next order of business is the State Water Commission agreements for cost share reimbursement. Mr. Paulson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Harder, if you could move to 218, number 2. Oh, you got it up here. Never mind. We got, I'm happy to report, after a lot of great work from our team, working with the State Water Commission and the staff members there, we've been able to bring these 2 cost share agreements before the Finance Committee here today. And I'll give a little bit of background. Our money held at the State Water Commission right now, that's been approved and appropriated through through a cost share agreement, is about $82 million. That's money from a 2015 and a 2017 appropriation. And so those dollars under our current cost share agreement had a cap of 10% for professional services and legal. And what we're doing with these 2 cost share agreements before you today is we're basically rescinding that initial cost share agreement, and we're executing 2 cost share agreements with the State Water Commission. The first one you'll see on page 218 basically moves $59,850,000 over into a cost share agreement and removes the 10% professional services fee cap restriction. And what this will allow us to do, and I know Mr. Costin's on the line, it's going to allow us to submit for reimbursement for approximately $30 million worth of professional services fees. And so that's going to allow us to increase our cash on hand immediately once upon execution of this agreement. And Mr. Costin, maybe you could just give us an indication of what the timing of that might be.
Joel, I'm not seeing Kent online right now.
Okay.
So
well, I would apologize, Mr. Chair. I would anticipate that reimbursement would go through near the end of the year, which is good because we want to increase our cash reserves as we move into the procurement of the P3. So this is a very positive development, and we've been working hard with the State Water Commission to get these in place. The second cost share agreement is also applicable to rescinding our first one, and that basically takes the $2015 and puts it back into a cost share agreement that does have the 10% restriction. But as you'll notice, there's 23 million left to draw on that. We do expect to expend those dollars on property acquisition as we move through the next 3 to 4 months. So I would recommend approval of these from the Finance Committee. And then just one other item to note, I did have a meeting with the State Water Commission a few weeks ago where they did approve the execution of an additional cost share reimbursement agreement for $44 million that will be added on top of these two cost share agreements, and that should be coming to us hopefully in the next few months from the State Water Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Are there questions for Mr. Paulson? I have one. On your first part of your discussion, Mr. Paulson, you talked about the 10% and you talked about professional services that we can bill for, and you used a number of about $30 million. Are there, when the definition of professional services is legal, engineering, all of the above when it comes to professional services?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So it would include our program management fees, our engineering and preliminary engineering fees, as well as legal, land acquisition, and appraisal fees. And so, as I think we all know, that's a majority of what our expenditures have been to date, have been related to preliminary engineering, legal, and land acquisition. And so that 10% cap on the reimbursement amounts through the state dollars was really quite a hindrance on our ability to expend the state dollars at this point in the program's life cycle. And so it was a very positive development that the state agreed with us that the 10% restriction did not apply to these funds, the 50 million currently being held, and it's going to allow us to reduce our state carryover significantly moving into the next legislative session.
Your opening statement was one that you and the team, this is really good work, and it certainly is good work. Congratulations and good work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
This is another actionable item, the State Water Commission agreement for a cost share reimbursement as outlined by Mr. Paulson. The chair would entertain a motion, please.
This is Rick.
Mr. Steen.
I will move to approve the State Water Water Commission agreements for cost share reimbursement.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second, please?
This is Chuck. I'll second that one too. Chuck Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Appreciate it. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Our next meeting will be November 18th. This concludes the agenda for the day. Mr. Paulson, do you have anything else to add, or Mr. Shockley or Mayor Mahoney?
No, I do not, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right.
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Before we conclude today and we adjourn, it would be remiss on my part if I didn't thank Mr. Shockley, Mr. Paulson, Mr. Martinson, and Mr. Steen for their patience and guidance as I take on the role of being on the Finance Committee. They've been extremely patient and understanding of some of the questions that I've had. So I am very most grateful for the four of you for your help and your guidance as we move forward on this. So thank you very much from a very grateful Finance Committee Chairman.
Well, thank
Chairman,
you.
we also have to say we're very excited about having you chair because you have learned how to have a meeting less than an hour. So thank you for your efficiency as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd also like to thank you, Ms. Chairman Dardis. That means a lot. We're very grateful for your leadership, and we're glad that you stepped up into this role. You certainly are a value to the program. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.